I want to start with something that probably happened to you recently. You were talking to someone and said something completely normal. Maybe you made a joke. Maybe you just mentioned something about your day. And then you noticed something strange in their reaction. They paused. They looked away for just a second. Their answer came back differently than you expected. And then everything went back to normal, like nothing happened. But something did happen. You felt it, and you've been wondering about it ever since. The thing about attraction is that it doesn't always make people bolder. That's what we think it does. We think when someone is attracted to you, they lean in, they make moves, they show obvious interest. But that's only one version of attraction. There's another version that looks almost like the opposite. It looks like distance. It looks like careful words. It looks like someone working very hard to keep things normal. And that version is actually more common than you think. Over the next few minutes, I'm going to walk you through 8 patterns that show up when someone is attracted to you but trying to hide it. Not because they're playing games, but because they're scared, because they respect you, because they're trying to manage something they didn't plan to feel. And the reason I'm sharing this is not to help you manipulate anyone. It's so you can understand what's actually happening beneath the surface of conversations that have been confusing you. Let's start with the first one, because it's the most revealing and most people completely miss it. Sign 1. He answers the private meaning before you even suggest it. Here's what this looks like. You're doing something together, maybe working on something, and you say something innocent. You might say, I didn't know you were this good with your hands, or I need your help with something I can't reach, or literally any statement that could have 2 meanings if someone's mind goes there. And his answer arrives too fast. Before you finish the sentence, before you changed your tone, before you winked or invited the double meaning in any way, his response is already addressing the version of the sentence that only exists in his head. Then he corrects himself. He refocuses on the actual task. He suddenly becomes very useful and practical. He names the tool. He reads the instructions. He's rebuilding innocence at high speed. Why does this happen? Because his mind went somewhere and his mouth started to follow before his brain stopped it. The correction isn't him being helpful. The correction is him recovering from something you weren't supposed to see. The hidden pattern here is timing. You didn't create the double meaning. His mind did. And that tells you something important. He's already imagining scenarios. He's already thinking about you in a way that makes ordinary words feel loaded. A person whose mind isn't going there doesn't hear double meanings in simple sentences. A person whose mind is going there hears them everywhere. Sign 2. His vocabulary suddenly becomes weirdly formal. This one's subtle, but it's powerful. You're having a normal conversation, he's relaxed, everything's easy, then something shifts. Maybe the room becomes quieter, maybe you both realize you're alone, maybe one of you makes a comment that lands a little differently, and suddenly his words change. He's no longer using the first phrase that came to mind. He's choosing the safest possible version of what he wants to say. He'll replace a natural, casual invitation with something clinical. He'll edit his own sentence before it comes out because he's worried about what else you might hear in it. It sounds like he's just being careful. But the timing is the clue. 5 minutes ago, he wasn't doing this. He was talking normally. Then the conversation picked up a charge, and now every word sounds like it's been cleared by a lawyer. When someone suddenly feels like they have to supervise their own language, it's because their unsupervised thoughts have become interesting. Normal words start feeling booby-trapped because he's hearing layers in them that you're not saying out loud. He's imagining context that doesn't exist yet. And he doesn't want to accidentally say the thing he's thinking. Sign 3. A simple question causes him to pause. You ask him something straightforward. Do you want the window open or closed? Or, are you hungry? Or any question that should have an instant answer. And there's a beat. Not long enough to look weird, but long enough that you notice he had to come back from somewhere before answering. You could explain this as indecision. But that's only half the story. The real clue is the context. Ask him the same simple question 10 minutes earlier, and the answer is immediate. Ask him the same question later in a different setting, and there's no delay. The pause only appears after certain moments, after you've been trading remarks that carried a charge, after the room became private, after something shifted between you. That pause is him changing channels. He was thinking about something, and he has to return to regular mode before he can give you a socially acceptable answer. The delay isn't empty. It's the time required to go from one conversation to another. What this tells you is that he's having two conversations at the same time. One is the actual discussion you're both part of. The other is happening in his head, and it's about you in a way he's not saying out loud. Sign 4. He makes a denial that nobody asked for. This is where it gets interesting. You mention something casual. You might say, that couch is really comfortable, or you look good today, or just describe something neutral. And he immediately responds with a denial nobody invited. He'll say something like, I'm not thinking about that, or I'm not going there, or that's not happening. And he says it while staying engaged. He doesn't leave the room. He doesn't change the subject. He just throws out a boundary that you weren't trying to cross. The innocent reading is that he's setting a limit. And maybe on some level he is. But psychologically, something else is happening. He had to construct the scenario in his head before he could deny it. The possibility entered his imagination, acquired enough detail to feel risky, and then came out disguised as prevention. Think about what this means. You didn't suggest anything. You didn't create the image. He did. By denying something unprompted, he's actually revealing that he's already pictured it, and he's dwelling on it enough that it feels risky. The bigger clue is what happens after. He doesn't actually leave. He stays right there. He keeps the conversation warm. And now that tension is sitting between you both, and he's the one who put it there by denying it. Sign 5, he brings back a harmless phrase from hours earlier. This is one of the most deliberate signs. You're having a conversation days or even weeks ago, and you say something that could have two meanings. Maybe you say, you wouldn't last 5 minutes doing what I do, about something difficult at your job. Or, I'm stronger than you think, something innocent, but something that he heard both ways. You move on, the conversation ends, hours pass, days pass, and then completely out of nowhere, he brings it back. He'll say something like, I've been thinking about what you said earlier. I think I actually could last longer than you expect. He frames it like he's continuing a practical discussion. He can defend it as continuity, but he passed 10 cleaner ways to make that point. He specifically chose to resurrect the phrase that carried the private charge. Why would he do that? Because he wants to feel that tension again without having to create an openly sexual conversation. He's having controlled re-entry. He's revisiting the moment that stayed with him. People forget throwaway words instantly. They only bring back the ones that kept playing after the subject changed. This is him testing the water again. He's letting you know that moment didn't actually leave his mind. Sign 6, he laughs after the moment instead of during it. You hand him something. Your hands don't touch. Nothing happens that's supposed to be flirty. He takes it, thanks you, turns away. And then you hear him laugh quietly. A soft laugh. At nothing you said that was meant to be funny. You might think the laugh belongs to whatever you said last. But look at the timing. The emotional reaction arrived after he moved out of your line of sight. That almost always means the ordinary event meant something private to him. When something is genuinely funny, people laugh while it's happening. When they laugh after they've turned away, it's because they're releasing something they didn't want you to watch arrive. The hidden thought is attached to a simple action, and he's protecting you from seeing the reaction before he can cover it up. His motive is straightforward. Keep the first moment clean and appropriate, then release the extra energy once you're not watching his face. The laugh you hear isn't about what happened. It's about what his mind did with it. Sign 7. He warns you not to ask what he was thinking. You're in the middle of a conversation, and he loses the thread for a second. His eyes drift. He's somewhere else. You say, "Where did you go?" And he answers, "You don't want to know," then immediately tries to keep going. Like that sentence didn't just put a locked door in the middle of the conversation. On the surface, it looks like playful evasion. But listen to what he actually accomplished. He protected the content while making absolutely sure you know content exists. He closed the door and left the light on underneath it. Think about how easy it would be to say nothing. He could have said, "Nothing, sorry," and ended it. But instead, he said something that positions the hidden thing as significant. He made you curious. He made you wonder. He made you invest in figuring out what earned the privacy. His motive is divided. Part of him wants to keep it private because it feels risky. Another part of him wants you to know that something exists. He's protecting himself while making sure you notice that protection is necessary. That's not nothing. Sign 8. He finally names the tension without naming the thought. This is the final and strongest sign. You've been in a pattern with him for a while. Small moments, loaded words, private meanings underneath ordinary conversations. And then it gets quiet after something lands differently than either of you expected. He exhales and says something like, "We should probably stop making everything sound like that," or "I know what you're doing," or "This keeps happening and we should talk about it." Listen to the language. He says, "we." He's not accusing you of creating the tension. He's admitting that he's been participating in the second conversation, the one underneath the surface words. He's acknowledging the private version that you've both been having. The innocent interpretation is that he wants it to stop. And if he says it firmly and then actually creates distance, take that seriously. But if he says it softly, if he stays engaged, if his body language doesn't close off, the hidden motive isn't escape. It's recognition with an escape hatch. He's reaching the point where acting completely normal is impossible. You've both noticed something. And now he's admitting it while leaving room for plausible deniability. He's saying, "I know you know, and you know I know, but we can still pretend this isn't happening if you want." That moment of acknowledgement is actually the strongest sign of all, because it means you weren't imagining it. It means he was paying attention too. It means the tension was real and mutual. Here's why this pattern matters. Attraction doesn't always look like confidence. Sometimes it looks like careful distance. Sometimes it looks like someone protecting themselves by supervising their own words. Sometimes it looks like someone who's scared to let you see how much they're thinking about you. When you notice these patterns, you're not seeing games. You're seeing fear. You're seeing respect. You're seeing someone who cares enough about you to try not to pressure you or make you uncomfortable. You're seeing vulnerability disguised as control. The strongest sign that any of this is real isn't a single moment, it's a pattern. One sign could be a coincidence. One delayed answer could be distraction. One suppressed laugh could mean nothing. But when you start seeing the same behaviors repeatedly, when he keeps bringing back charged phrases, when his words keep becoming formal in certain moments, when there's consistently a pause before he answers simple questions, that's when you know something is actually there. The point of recognizing these patterns isn't to manipulate anyone. It's to stop doubting yourself when you sense something beneath the surface. It's to know that when you feel like someone's having a private conversation underneath the words, you're probably right. It's to understand that their silence isn't disinterest. Their caution isn't rejection. Their distance might actually be the opposite of what it looks like. Sometimes the people who are most attracted to you are the ones who work the hardest to hide it. And the only way you'll ever see it is by paying attention to the patterns they can't quite control. The pauses, the careful words, the moments they can't quite cover up, the times they bring back something that should have died hours ago. The laugh they release once you're not looking, that's where the real signal is. Not in what they do, but in what they're trying so hard not to do.